Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. Dada, with your WWE Survivor Series WarGames instant analysis. That's right, Getting Over is back once again, and we are here shortly after the 2024 edition of WWE Survivor Series WarGames went off the air to break down every single thing that happened on WWE's final premium live event of the year, at least for the main roster. The Silver King is here rocking solo for the night. Vintage Chris Vanini had the opportunity to attend the Texas A&M football game, which, while entertaining, I would say did not exactly live up to Survivor Series WarGames. So we're going to take you through everything that happened on the big show, many of the major go-home moments from SmackDown. Of course, we will have results, grades, analysis, and much more, all before the show is out. We are taping this a couple hours after the show ended, which is rare. Our instant analysis normally come immediately after the PLEs and pay-per-views end. But due to college football, due to some other responsibilities, that's what we had to do. The Silver King is going to do his damnedest to deliver, as we always do, right here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast, that performance-enhancing audio that you know and love. So quickly, off the top, allow me to remind you that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
is all about defy.
So please, folks,
stop being marks for yourselves and go back to being a mark for me.
You know the deal. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, leave a 5-star rating on Apple. If you leave a 5-star written review, we'll read it live right here on the show. Subscribe on YouTube at Getting Overcast. Follow us on Twitter at Getting Overcast. Follow us on Blue Sky at Getting Over, the latter two, for episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all of that good stuff. It is also where you can send questions and comments for the show. And if you have any on Survivor Series WarGames, be sure to send them in. We will discuss them Tuesday on our next WWE episode. But on social media is where you can vote in our pre- and post-show polls. Of course, we will discuss those grades at the end of this instant analysis. And lastly, please also remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well, $5 a month for the next couple days, $45 for the entire year. Black Friday, Cyber Monday special. You can become an official Getting Overhead. Visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major TV show, and exclusive news analysis posts. You can get all of it. You can support the continuation of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. And for the next couple days, you can get 3 months free by heading over to buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Normally at this juncture on an instant analysis, we'd crack open a cold one. Because the Silver King's riding solo, I didn't want a good beer to get cold. So we're again going to save that. Hopefully we bring it back soon enough. We're not wasting any more time though. We're getting right into the 2024 WWE Survivor Series WarGames instant analysis. Real quick, some aesthetic notes. The T-Pain version of War Pigs was used alongside the Ozzy Osbourne version, which cut down on the repetitiveness. That was a positive. It's something we've complained about previously. There was also pyro in the ring to start, as opposed to the fire and stuff that I remembered from last year. And there were 4 total ring mat sponsors, up from, I believe, the previous maximum of 2, I want to say. And there were some barrier advertisements as well, but nothing overly obtrusive like we have seen in the past. So let's start, of course, where Survivor Series WarGames ended. The main event, the OG Bloodline and CM Punk against the new Bloodline and Bronson Reed inside WarGames. We got to start with the go home from SmackDown because, unfortunately, a lot happened on that show. Nick Aldis backstage confronted both Bloodline teams, making it known everyone was banned from ringside for the advantage match. Later was the Roman Reigns Punk sit-down, with Paul Heyman moderating in a regular shirt and tie. This time, Punk was late. Roman Reigns was so perturbed that he was about to leave before it started. It was filmed in a cinematic and dramatic style. Punk said he was there for Heyman. Reigns said he didn't need his help, didn't like his tone, didn't like his attitude, didn't like him. Heyman made it a zero-sum game for Reigns. He told Punk he's next if the OG Bloodline gets toppled. Punk said he'd help Reigns regain the Ula Fala as long as he gets revenge for Heyman. and they can revisit this heat between them when it's all said and done. Punk held up a finger, saying one time, one favor, referring to Heyman, and then he left. Reigns asked for details on the favor. Heyman brushed that off, saying they could discuss it after they get through WarGames. He also kept playing with his Hall of Fame ring, which was probably a purposeful character decision, but it was notable. This hit. It just didn't hit anywhere near as hard as the segment with Cody Rhodes ahead of Bad Blood. And that was definitely the idea, to put together an equivalent face-to-face. Perhaps it was the setting of Bobby Dodd Stadium that lent so much gravitas to that before. Roman and Punk sitting at a tiny table with Paul, it didn't really provide like a heavy visual element to make the moment feel grand. It was still successful. It provided their perspectives and leaned into the apprehension of teaming with one another, especially with Punk big timing Reigns by showing up late, not buying into his aura. That all worked. Roman's facial tics and such, it sold it incredibly well. Adding the favor aspect was totally unexpected. How that comes to fruition remains to be seen, especially given it's Heyman and not Reigns who owes the favor. Maybe it's Paul negotiating something on his behalf, like the main event of WrestleMania. It could be Heyman managing Punk after he helps the OG bloodline. That seems like a step too far. The miss was not getting into the details of why they hate each other and also picking a better setting for this segment. Smart fans know, casuals don't understand why Reigns and Punk have this much heat. This is a big four show, Survivor Series. It deserves that kind of attention. We have repeatedly said this on the podcast. If they just gave this entire storyline 2 to 3 weeks more build, it would have been even better than it already was. So for that reason, this segment came across as melodrama, especially with the forced, overindulgent, dramatic music. It again made me believe the lack of atonement from Reigns might be purposeful. He's still a heel. He really has not changed one iota in his heart. The only difference really is that fans are cheering for this guy now because they hate the new bloodline even more than him. So the advantage match was Jey Uso against Jacob Fatu. Not only was this Jacob's first singles match in WWE, it was probably only the second time we've heard his theme, which remains a total banger. Jacob caught a tope suicida ringside, slamming Jey into the post, then got dodged into the post inside himself. Fatu caught Jey flying for a swing Uranagi, adding a handspring moonsault of all moves. Mid-match, Jacob yelled, "I love you, Solo." That just popped me like when Lola Vice screams, "I am Latina," for no reason whatsoever. Anyway, Fatu next hit a pop-up Samoan drop. Jey got knees up to counter a Swanton bomb. He followed with a spear and an Uso splash for a false finish. Jey murked Jacob into the announce table with a tope suicida. When he flew over, he knocked Corey Graves like green drink or something, which looked like vomit. Fatu ultimately dumped Jey into the table with a Samoan drop, adding an implant DDT and a moonsault to get the clean 1-2-3 over his cousin and the recent Intercontinental Champion in Fatu's first ever singles match. Solo gave him a big hug on the stage after the bell. This was exactly what needed to be done. Jacob showed out immensely with a squeaky clean win. Jey got a big false finish. The heels earned the advantage and won the go-home. All of that is exactly what it needed to be. 3.75 stars B+, the match of the night for SmackDown. An interesting note before we get into this actual WarGames match. During the show opening entrances, Jey Uso and Sami Zayn were shown palling around, while Roman Reigns and Jimmy Uso entered separately together. Punk was separate from all four of them, so the team was visually divided. Also, my Peacock cut off the heel entrances and video package for the main event because I was watching from behind while it was live, but Tama Tonga started. He was hysterical, climbing around the cage like an animal. Punk went right to the heels cage and got them riled up. Reigns side-eyed Punk after entering, and he did it again while they were in the cage and it closed. And then Jey entered from the crowd despite everyone else coming out from the stage. The crowd was hot for him. I'll tell you, the Vancouver crowd, at least on TV and from a sound standpoint, really was not great for the entire show. 18,000 people sold out in this arena. It sounded like 6,000 people were there for most of the show on TV. Again, maybe it was better live. Bronson Reed really raised the rent, going in second, throwing tons of chairs in the ring. The crowd reacted accordingly as Jey threw chairs at his head, only to get blocked. Jimmy entered next to save his brother. He was the first person all night not to grab weapons. Solo held Tongaloa back from entering third so Fatu could straight up beast everybody. Reigns similarly stopped Punk by holding his arm on the cage in front of him so Zayn could enter next. Loa was obviously after that, giving the new bloodline an opportunity to lay out the OGs with Fatu hitting a moonsault on Jimmy. Reigns was cocky and confident, ready to leave the cage ahead of Punk, only for Punk to storm right past him, which of course pissed off the Tribal Chief, who shook his head as Punk looked back from the steps. So Punk grabbed a toolbox, he murked everyone with it. Well, everyone except Jacob, who no-sold it, murked him back with a pop-up Samoan drop. Sikoa taunted Reigns before entering with the OGs again completely laid out. Fatu stacked the Usos for a double moonsault. Then Bronson hit Tsunami on Sammy, and Punk got crushed again, with Solo using his own lock to close the door. Roman could not figure out how to enter, so he literally scaled the wall, fighting off the Tongans and Reed before bouncing Sikoa's head off the steel barrier. Then Roman hit an uncommon flying crossbody into a group. Reigns helped everyone to their feet except Punk, whom he went face-to-face with. That led Heyman down, begging for them to work together because this is WarGames. In fact, I shouldn't even be saying it. Shame on me that I've gone this long in the show without saying this is WarGames. That led to the announcement with the teams meeting 5-on-5 in the middle. Double Uso splash on the Tongans. There was an awkward spot where Reigns avoided Samoan Spike and accidentally speared Punk, who had lifted Fatu for go to sleep. Roman kicked out of the Samoan Spike that followed, false finish. Fatu went to moonsault Punk, only for his knee to seemingly give out completely. Except Jacob kept going on one leg. Roman low-blowed him, then speared Solo, only to get super kicked by Bronson, who climbed to the top of the structure with Reigns on a table below. Punk came to his rescue, saving Reigns from a tsunami. Reed destroyed himself, so Roman offered a hand to lift Punk finally. Reigns saved Punk then from Jacob's Impaler DDT with a Superman punch. Solo then caught Roman with two Samoan spikes for a double super kick broken fall. The Usos combined for 1D to take out Fatu. Jay speared Loa. Sammy caught Tom with Blue Thunderbomb. Jimmy hit Uso splash from the top of the cage on Jacob through a table. Maybe the single biggest move of his entire career. Maybe I'm missing something. It stood out to me. The tide completely turned with the OGs all lifting each other off the canvas. They surrounded Solo, the last man standing. Fans, of course, chanted, "You fucked up." Reigns opened his arms, gave him the chance to hug and acknowledge him. But Solo, he manned up. He went for the spike instead. He got super kicked and haluva kicked. He ate go to sleep with a spear chaser, and the OGs stood tall in about 42 minutes to end WarGames. The OGs all hugged as Punk watched. He respectfully dapped them up. Then they did a group hug as Reigns watched. Sammy convinced Roman to make good with Punk. They did ultimately shake hands, both saying one time before doing the ones and GTS pose as the pyro went off. Punk hugged Heyman ringside. Punk said that he will come to ask when he needs the favor. The OGs all hugged again, right between the shark cages. They again did the ones and the GTS gesture, and that ended the show. Nothing extra. It did feel like something was coming after that. So off the top here, obvious concern for Fatu. Believe it was the same knee he injured earlier this year, kayfabe injured, apparently. And if it's a ligament situation, that could certainly be substantial both in the short term and the long term if it is real. It has been a true breakout for this guy in 2024, and it would be devastating to lose him if the injury is real. I keep saying that because it's certainly possible, perhaps even more than likely, that he slipped and covered, or that it was entirely kayfabe after what happened around SummerSlam. The idea being to give him a big-time visual excuse to get taken out of a match when he otherwise should not get put down in any meaningful way. I totally buy either of those as a legitimate possibility. As we tape this show, there has been no word that the injury was legit. Usually you would hear that coming out of a major show like this. If it wasn't, he remains a great seller. It was either a great cover or it was a smart story beat for the match to excuse him kind of getting taken out and losing. But again, like I said, he was a breakout star in this match. He carried a portion of it pretty much by himself. And if it is real for whatever possible reason, that of course would be frustrating, I'm sure, and disappointing and kind of devastating for him individually. In terms of what happened with SummerSlam earlier this year, everyone thought it was real. He sold it like it was real. The reports were that it was kayfabe. I don't know if that's true. It's certainly possible he might have hurt himself, but it wasn't serious and they sold it like it was. He may not have hurt himself at all. He may have hurt himself and it was serious and they just told everyone it wasn't. So it's kind of just impossible to know. On the other hand, there was a report after the show that Bronson hurt himself on that tsunami. Watching it back, it looks like he kind of pulled an Adam Copeland and his ankle folded on the landing. And of course, it looked nasty when I played it back because I tried to see it, and you can clearly see underneath the table, the ankle turning. He landed on his feet rather than flat on the table, which you kind of want to do, but also don't really want to do. You kind of want to take that impact flat. Given the run that Reed has been on, that would be obviously just as devastating and unfortunate for him. The momentum has totally been at his back for the last few months. He was another breakout star over the second half of 2024. It seemed immensely clear that he was about to continue a huge feud with Seth Rollins, probably going through the winter. And now it's possible that that's over. So, of course, we'll follow up on Tuesday and maybe even Monday night on Raw if we learn more coming out of Survivor Series WarGames. Now let's talk about the actual match. The dynamic of this WarGames was pretty much different from every single one that preceded it. It was super unique. Reigns and Punk being at odds until late was a real nice red herring, thinking we're going to get an implosion and a babyface loss. They played it extremely well. As is the case in most WarGames and matches of this kind, blood and guts, whatever else you want to call it, it's rather lackluster until all 10 people are in the ring. But once Reigns entered and that door, I was going to say once the door closed, it was already closed. Once Reigns entered and the announcement was made, this thing was a show. Bronson Tsunami, injury or not, was incredible. His little arm shakes always make me pop. Jimmy had his best match since returning and one of his best probably in the last 2 years. The Punk save of Reigns in that spot came with like 100th of a second to spare. The assassination of Sikoa to end it, that was super fitting given how many people he terrorized. All of them got a shot in. Punk, of course, on behalf of Heyman. That was like the big bad getting taken down in a movie. Think Thanos in Avengers Endgame or the dude in Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I forgot his name. But ironic, of course, given Reigns was previously Thanos in this situation just a year ago at WrestleMania. It did feel like the closing of a chapter in many ways, but I also don't believe that Reigns and Sikoa are completely done. Heyman playing Peacemaker, leading to the finish, gave him a substantial role. The Reigns-Punk handshake should directly relate to Rollins, as we predicted weeks ago and discussed again this week on the Ultimate Preview. Rollins must be seething in kayfabe that his two most hated rivals teamed up and succeeded in a spot like this, but not just that, made good after it was over. And then restating the favor, Punk really hammered that home as a legitimate story beat that's going to be revisited probably sooner than later. I still believe it's going to be Punk ensuring Heyman gets in the main event of WrestleMania. One spot I felt was potentially missed was Heyman not grabbing the Ulafala and putting it over Reigns' head, though I could see the story being he needs to beat Sikoa one-on-one for that moment in tribal combat to win it back officially. But there have been multiple times where he's seen it on the ground. He's picked it up and either put it around his neck or almost put it around his neck. So if he's been willing to do that previously, he should have been looking to do that here when he literally beat and pinned Sikoa. And then to address the end, it really felt like there was going to be a post-credit moment with most assuming The Rock was showing up. I mean, WWE really dragged that out only to just end the show. We've definitely been conditioned to expect something in a situation like that, especially after Survivor Series, given what happened with CM Punk a year ago. It didn't drag the show down or anything, but it was a strange closing note when they could have and probably should have just ended it the exact same way in the ring, maybe with Heyman getting in there alongside the team. Interesting note that Jay and Sammy are 3-0 in WarGames in as many years. And in terms of my issues with Roman never making amends with Jay and Sammy in particular, that did not cost him here. But there was a clear visual divide before and after the match with his family. We've criticized it enough. We don't need to talk about it again, especially in a show like this. But I'm not completely sure it's been forgotten about by WWE, given how this was structured. We wanted it in the build for WarGames. We didn't get it. As long as we get it at some point, and it makes sense when we get it, that'll be great. If we never get it, that, of course, will be massively disappointing. I'm now remembering I forgot to grade the match. I'm at 4.5 stars and an A. It was definitely the match of the night. It was an absolute killer from a storytelling and match building perspective. The wrestling wasn't perfect. The front half was not as exciting as it could have been to move it into the A+ range, which, as you know, we hold back for truly exceptional matches on this show. But for this match type, and given the extended storyline coming in, this completely delivered as a main event. And they didn't even need to blade or do anything like that, which I particularly appreciated given Hell in a Cell got that out of the way at Bad Blood. To just go back into WarGames and pretty much do that again, or a version of that again, it probably would have been too much. It allowed the Hell in a Cell match to stand out even more looking back on it in retrospect. So that's men's WarGames. Let's move to women's WarGames. Bianca Belair, Naomi, Io Sky, Rhea Ripley, and Bayley against Liv Morgan, Raquel Rodriguez, Nia Jax, Tiffany Stratton, and Candice LeRae. On SmackDown, the faces opened the show led by Ripley, saying they may not be best friends, but they're all on the same page because each is out for revenge against at least one person on the other side. Naomi co-signed. Belair was in fatigues. She was still pissed about Jade Cargill. The heels answered on stage with Nia pointing out that Bianca should hate Io and Bayley, and the latter two should be imploding given their shitty relationship. Bayley shot back about Jax's bullying of Stratton and using of LeRae. Liv said Bayley's lost her manipulation touch. She planted seeds that she attacked Jade to replace her. The Rhea and Liv feud ultimately took center stage, with the faces choosing to storm the heels on the ramp as they were about to leave. It was a full-on pull-apart brawl with fans chanting, "Let them fight," because it really was a hot brawl between all of them. This was a notably strong go-home segment, given these are usually super formulaic. We didn't get all 10 women speaking. Rather, the focus was on a select few. And their promos weren't basic, but rather detailed and storyline-driven, which to me was key. Nia coming out to lay down the logic, particularly about Bayley and Io teaming, that was super necessary. I hoped there would be a 30-second backstage segment where they briefly made an agreement to put aside their differences for one match. That didn't come. The only other part of this that stood out to me was Ripley. Since wearing the mask, she seems to believe she's Batman. She dropped her voice and speaks with a growl, even more so than she used to. Maybe it was just for the WarGames build, but it was super noticeable. And in general, she really struggled on the mic in this segment. Super awkward. She's not the best promo, but she's good enough. And this was not her best work by any means. And lastly, look, I'd be remiss if I didn't say it. Bayley in this segment
gonna look good, but she's got me saying, "Hey now!"
Now, the women's edition of
WarGames
open Survivor Series with Bayley and surprisingly Nia starting. And Jax took a hurricanrana off the top. Ripley's protective mask had crazy horns on it. Naomi had a birthday cone hat. A Jax hip attack sent Bayley from one ring to another. Naomi brought in a neon kendo stick and a toilet seat, which she put around Nia's head for a stink face. Candice jumped in front of Tiffy for the second spot, laying Bayley on a 3-chair bed for a moonsault that missed its mark. Bianca and Tiffy seriously amped up the energy. Tiffy and Nia combined for a backslide leg drop and Samoan drop flying neck breaker. Io entered by strapping a garbage can to herself like a backpack and climbing the structure. She and Candice seemed to miss a spot after that before she and Tiffy exchanged gymnastics counters. The crowd was really hot for Io. Rhea got the biggest pop, obviously. Naomi did a springboard double rear view. The faces used Bianca's braids and a toilet seat to destroy Nia and Raquel. Bayley even used one of Belair's braids, which I thought was pretty funny. Rhea headbutted Nia to hell, standing alone for Liv, who seemed scared running backstage, but she actually grabbed a baseball bat. Ripley removed her mask to get Morgan to attack her, only for Riptide to immediately be thwarted. She got held down for 10 bat shots to the ribs and back. The action really picked up from there with everyone hitting big moves. Tiffy and Io climbed opposite corners simultaneously. Stratton hit a huge avalanche swanton bomb while Sky donned the trash can for over the moonsault. Excellent from both of them. Tiffy emptied out a trash can that had her Money in the Bank briefcase at the bottom. She grabbed it with both champions down. She was about to cash in on one of them when Raquel confronted her. Io then sprayed a fire extinguisher wildly. During that chaos, Rhea handcuffed Raquel to the top rope. Bayley and Io simultaneously saved Bianca on a fall and finally had a moment arguing with each other, only to both get leveled by Nia. I'm glad they included that in the match. Jax smacked Belair with her own braid, but got double powerbombed off the ropes through a table by Bianca and Naomi. Liv hit Oblivion on Bayley into a chair. Rodriguez from the corner, still tied up, saved Morgan from Riptide. Ripley ate a code breaker into a chair. Rhea caught Liv on the top rope for Riptide through a table, rolling her into the middle of the ring for the 1-2-3. And approximately 38 minutes, I believe 11, after the Match Beyond started. They kept calling it WarGames. It's the Match Beyond, but it's fine. Well, look, this did not go as expected in pretty much any way, starting with the winners. As we said on the Ultimate Preview, the heel team needed this so much more than the faces. But in the end, the more dominant and experienced talent in this match stood tall. There's nothing wrong with that, but it was expected and therefore somewhat less exciting, especially given that the OGs won the main event as well. So 2 babyface winners. I want to say the vast majority of main roster WarGames matches have been won by babyfaces. And it would be okay if it was like 60%, but I feel like it's 80+%. I would have done the math, but obviously we did this pretty quick after I got the chance to watch Survivor Series. The first 2/3 of this match was a surprising slog, with everyone basically just wasting time until the cage door locked. This is something that WWE needs to fix about WarGames. Every person who entered the ring after the first 2 stopped to grab one or multiple weapons. It's okay if a couple do it, but having 8 wrestlers scurrying around the ring, looking for foreign objects, picking up the wrong side of the ring apron to like figure out where they are, it's not only repetitive, it's boring. It also lessens the heightened enthusiasm for their entrances. When that door opens, right, and Io Sky is running down, and her case was different because she did the trash can, but whatever, let's just make believe it was someone else. When Bianca Belair runs down, I want her charging into that ring like a hot tag and wrecking shit. I don't want her spending, 60 seconds of the 3 minutes that go between entrances outside the ring looking for weapons. Again, it's okay if a couple people do it. Having every single woman do it hurt this match, and it was one reason why the men's match was better. The men's match was better for numerous reasons on this particular night, but there were multiple entrants in that match that just ran right into the ring. It made it far more exciting. All of that said, all of those criticisms aside, the final 11 minutes were great. Big spots, huge moves, quality execution across the board. The first 2/3 of the match, there was just an overall lack of excitement, both in terms of what the wrestlers created, how the crowd responded. Starting with Jax was simply the wrong decision in every possible way. We've been high on her. We've put her over as a breakout star in 2024, maybe the most improved wrestler in WWE right now from where they were previously, but you can't have her start a 30-minute match. Let's just be realistic. There were so many other women on that heel team, namely Tiffany Stratton, who was massively over and could have worked with Bayley and had a great 5-minute opening and done a bunch more stuff. There's a lot of people they could have put in that match that would have been more exciting and would have done better with that extended period of time than Nia. Also, she's a champion. She shouldn't have wanted in kayfabe to start. The Stratton tease with the Money in the Bank cash-in was super formulaic. Rhea beating Liv again in the middle of the ring was completely unnecessary. I know that Liv injured her again, but she'll get her comeuppance when she wins the title back. How many times does Ripley need to best Morgan specifically? I mean, they could have had her beat pretty much anyone else. They had her beat Liv, which again, it gives away the way this storyline is going to end. Maybe they're going to swerve us and it'll be different. But, to this point, it hasn't been. It's a tough grade, not only because of what I just mentioned, but due to the stipulation. This certainly was among the bottom couple WarGames matches since it returned to WWE. It was a huge disappointment compared to expectation. This wasn't the wrestling. The camera work was terrible during this match. It missed multiple major spots, including the spot of the match, the Io and Stratton double high risk. They had to show it via replay just so we could actually see what happened. The grade is so tough because the final 11 minutes were really good. There were some awesome sequences, the fire extinguisher with the handcuffing of Raquel. Also, they didn't make Rodriguez look like shit because she was handcuffed. There was nothing she could do. They didn't make her look even weaker than she had looked previously. So there were a lot of positive parts of this match. At the same time, you can't ignore the first 2/3 of it. But because it's a WarGames match, it naturally is going to be difficult to get into the final third. So my grade for right here is 3.5 stars and a B. Again, that's taking into account match type. I will watch this entire show again before Tuesday's WWE episode. I could see changing the grade. If it went in any direction, it would probably be downgrading it. But I'll see it a second time, and we'll see how I feel after that. That's just the fact of the matter. 3 more matches to discuss. World Heavyweight Championship. Gunther defending against Damian Priest. No build on the go-home because this is a Raw brand match. Gunther sold his internal crisis early. He missed a chop that got countered with a bell clap. Priest sold an injured shoulder almost right away after 2 high-impact moves, so Gunther worked it heavy throughout the match. Priest came back, delivering some huge elbows and chops, a big kick and a flatliner. Then he escaped a powerbomb, but couldn't lift for Razor's Edge, countering an armbar attempt into a surprising triangle choke. Gunther lifted for a powerbomb false finish. Priest again surprised with a Hurricanrana off the ropes, adding a Razor's Edge for a half-cover false finish due to the shoulder. 2 South of Heavens were thwarted due to Priest's arm giving out, so Gunther rolled him into a Kimura lock on the bad arm. He nearly passed out. He got a rope break. That led Gunther to briefly doubt himself again. They went for a superplex, but Priest threw Gunther off and threw himself to the ground. Fans chanted, "You fucked up." It seemed purposeful, especially since Finn Balor ran in as the referee was checking Gunther, hitting Priest with a coup de grace off the steel steps ringside. Gunther booted Balor's head off right away. Then he powerbombed Priest, delivered hammer elbows, and locked Priest in a shoulder trap sleeper for the knockout victory. Another excellent match between these guys. Yet another excellent match between these guys lessened a tad due to Balor interfering in the finish. If this had been a clean Gunther win, we're talking A territory. Loved the match story with Gunther overcoming his internal crisis and Priest overcoming his injured shoulder to again look like he was going to win back the World Heavyweight Championship in this case. These guys really know how to work. They are tremendous in-ring partners. This sound will get overused momentarily, but this was very much
big meaty man slapping meat. That's what I want.
A strong 1-2 punch with the Intercontinental title match that preceded it, and we're going to talk about that next. Inserting Balor with Gunther, like having them get involved physically with one another, it gives me hope WWE might move to a triple threat rather than go immediately to Priest, Balor, and Gunther Punk. In fact, Balor winning the title in a triple threat only to lose it to Punk in February, that would be perfect. He'd serve as a cushion without Gunther losing clean again. I'm going 4 stars, A- here. I will rewatch as usual ahead of Tuesday's show. I could see going up or down by a 1/4 star either way. This was my most start and stop match just because football was going on simultaneously. Now, I saw some people complaining about Balor's interference beyond the generality of wanting a clean end to the match. Finn was allowed to again look strong in a big moment. It's almost certain he's now moving into a title program of some kind, and he got one up on Priest again after being unfortunately beaten in their singles match previously. He's still a heel, okay? You got to remember, he's still a heel. This was a good moment for Balor. It again shows that WWE and Paul Levesque see him in that lower main event area. So yes, I wanted a clean finish also, but Balor being included was fine, perhaps even positive, especially if what I laid out earlier about going triple threat, maybe even doing the title change, Balor pins Priest, wins the title, then he drops it to Punk, and then Priest and Balor fight, and Priest beats him. Like, it's so easy to get there, and so many things would be satisfied if they actually do it. By the way, Priest attacked Balor backstage after the show, only to be beaten down 3-on-1 by Judgment Day, which was lurking around. There was no Dominic Mysterio. Balor destroyed Priest's shoulder with a steel chair as Adam Pearce screamed bloody murder at him. So after that, maybe it won't be a triple threat at all, or it looks like it's going to be Balor and Gunther 1-on-1, and then Priest comes back right before the match and they make it a triple threat. We will see. Now let's talk about the Intercontinental Championship match. Braun Breaker, Sheamus, and Ludwig Kaiser in a triple threat. This was third on the card, and all 3 men delivered.
Big meaty man slapping meat. That's what I want.
Spoiler alert, that is what we got. Seeing Braun wear the IC title around his waist, I still don't like it, even with the blue. It just looked like a toy on him. Kaiser lodged a chair in the corner early, hit a running dropkick on Sheamus ringside into the steel steps, only for Breaker to immediately catch him with a launched shoulder tackle. Looked like the guy jumped off a trampoline. It was crazy. Braun did the apron leap double clothesline, knocking both challengers over the announce table. Sheamus respawned after getting thrown over the barricade for 21 beats on Kaiser and Breaker. Sheamus clotheslined Kaiser into the timekeeper's area with the shillelagh, but dropped it to slap meat with Breaker and hit a Celtic cross for a 2.9 false finish. Braun came back with a Frankensteiner, then got sidestepped into that prop chair, eating a bro kick for what would have been the win if Kaiser had not pulled the referee out of the ring. Kaiser then beat Sheamus with the shillelagh, only to eat a massive pump knee for another false finish. Sheamus's midsection gave out as he tried to run for a bro kick, which allowed Kaiser to hit a Death Valley driver. Kaiser then hit his turnover DDT finisher, only to eat a flying spear from Breakker, who put Sheamus down with another spear right to his injured midsection to retain the title. This was simply tremendous from bell to bell. And at the time it ended, it was the match of the night. Just as we suspected on the Ultimate Preview, it was a show-stealing effort from these three guys. Meat-banging excellence across the board with a terrific match story to boot.
He don't want no water. He don't want no bread. All he wants is meat.
I mean, there was a lot of beef out there.
There's a lot of beef out here.
Breakker continues to become a made man working with veterans. Kaiser again proved his worth in the upper mid card. Sheamus was so massively over. It was crazy. He has to be more over now than any time in his entire career. Hearing the crowd groan at the finish when he didn't counter the spear with a bro kick, it was music to my ears. It's exactly the way you want fans reacting when a babyface like that goes down. My clearest takeaway from this match is that there is an obvious understanding by WWE at this point that Sheamus needs to win the Intercontinental title, and soon. The multiple teases throughout, the incredible crowd reactions to those false finishes, it leads me to believe what we talked about on the Ultimate Preview will happen. He's going to get strapped up soon, maybe at WrestleMania or the next European PLE. It would have been truly tough to ask for anything more from these guys. It was a perfect mid-show match. The hottest the crowd was for the entire first half of the show. 4.25 stars and an A. And yes, Sheamus, this was indeed a
Banger.
United States Championship, LA Knight against Shinsuke Nakamura. Following a Nakamura-Andrade match that we will discuss on Tuesday's show, Knight ran out to finally get some licks in, except Shinsuke felt him coming, caught him before he could land a blow with a face full of black mist. Knight sold it excellently as Nakamura just kind of slinked out of the ring and casually, methodically walked backstage. Knight later was kayfabe off his game, but still cut a solid promo, even though it was basic on Shin. So that meant coming into Survivor Series, Nakamura was 3 for 3 in getting the best of Knight, with LA completely rudderless in terms of knowing how to combat him. I figured Knight would at least get some offense in this attack, but nope. And you know what? The story and feud was better off for it. This only made me want Nakamura to win the title more, which, despite that being my prediction on the Ultimate Preview, I was immensely pessimistic about actually happening. This was second on the card. WWE debuted a remixed Nakamura theme on SmackDown. And then, in kayfabe one night later, but obviously 8 days later in reality, at Survivor Series, he had another remix theme and entrance that was even better than the one they put on SmackDown. The other was very good. This one was straight up excellent. It used his original theme, put a totally different spin on it. WWE put the live and loud decibel meter on for Knight's entrance, except while he got a pop, it didn't register anything special, like nothing over 90. Maybe this is a good time to go a little bit deeper on this Vancouver crowd that was severely disappointing for being 18,000 people. I mean, the women's WarGames match and this match in particular, it was straight up terrible. Again, the way it came across on TV. Maybe live it was different, but I didn't see people up and cheering and going crazy. The latter matches on the show, the Intercontinental, the World Heavyweight, and the WarGames, especially the Intercontinental and the men's WarGames, it was way better. But for these first two matches, it left a lot to be desired. They did not do themselves well. Again, at least the way it came off on TV. Anyway, back to the match. Nakamura hit his new back elbow early. Knight hit an inverted AA burning hammer style move. Shin stopped the box jump superplex, hitting an avalanche overhead release suplex. Knight countered Kinshasa with a side slam and hit the jump up elbow. Shinsuke got LA in the eye during a counter sequence, slamming him on the steel grate between the rings and then hitting Kinshasa to the back of his head to win the United States Championship in 10 minutes. Talk about delivering on the build. I hoped and ultimately thought this would happen. I still had reservations about WWE actually pulling the trigger, they pulled the damn trigger.
This is such good shit.
Bringing Nakamura back in this kind of character package and presentation aura, it necessitated him continuing to get the best of night and come away with the title. He dominated all three phases of this build and immediately won the championship. That is how you reestablish someone as dominant and worthy, especially having him go over a massive babyface. The lack of crowd response during this match was super frustrating. It didn't deter me, though, from enjoying the booking. Had they cheered Knight the way pretty much any other city would cheer him, then Nakamura would have gotten even more heat, and this would have been even more impactful. That's why it was disappointing. The work between them was solid, even if it was a bit slow. It was really a story-heavy match. It showed that Shin had perfectly scouted LA and was able to take advantage of him at pretty much every turn. He knew exactly what he was going to do, how he was going to do it, and he knew exactly how to combat that. And that's exactly what Nakamura said in the lead up during that one promo that he got. I know I said exactly like 6 times right there, but it literally delivered on what was promised, what Shin promised, the heel promised. And that was nice because that rarely happens in professional wrestling, but especially in WWE. We saw how he came back last time, looked repackaged, lost everything. This time gets repackaged, even more sinister, and actually wins right away off the bat. Now, Knight's going to win the title back. Okay, he'll probably get it back at like the Royal Rumble. Hopefully not Saturday night's main event. It's only 2 weeks away. They should not rematch with a title change there. But if they were to do it the first week of January or at some point between then and Royal Rumble, I would be okay with it. It at least establishes Nakamura as a legitimate threat and allows him to be someone who can work into the upper mid-card, be it the main event picture with one of the world titles or the Intercontinental or United States Championship. And again, just having a heel like him that serves as a gateway to get to those champions, that's beneficial as well, especially someone at his advanced age at this point. I know he's still young, overall when it comes to age, but in professional wrestling, he's on the latter stages of his career. I went 3.25 stars and a B for this just because it was short, but it was meaningful. And as you can tell, I loved the way that it was booked. So that wraps up your WWE Survivor Series WarGames instant analysis, all the results, the grades for the matches. What we have left is to give you our final grade for the show. Before we get to that, we need to go over our pre-show expectation grades. On the Ultimate Preview, Vintage Chris Vanini, who, by the way, will give all of his thoughts about Survivor Series WarGames this coming Tuesday on our next WWE show. His expectation was 89 out of 100, so a B+. I was a 91 out of 100, so an A-. All of you are getting overheads, voted on Twitter at Getting Overcast. Unfortunately, we couldn't do a poll on Blue Sky. When that functionality does exist, we will do a poll there. 63% A, 31.5% B, 4.3% C, 1.1% D or F, which of course is ridiculous, averaged out to a 90.7 out of 100, so a 91 out of 100, an A- right in line with the Silver King. Now, because Chris is not here and I usually give him the opportunity to go first with his grade, I'll actually give mine first this time, and then I will go to all of your grades as, once again, voted in our poll on Twitter at Getting Overcast. So the final 3 matches of Survivor Series WarGames were all bangers. They completely delivered. The first 2 were not. And the women's WarGames in particular was not only the most disappointing match on the show, it was the most disappointing major match that WWE has put on in a while, especially involving the women who usually deliver. It absolutely should have been the traditional Survivor Series elimination. As I've stated multiple times in the lead up, if you do the Survivor Series elimination, it's way more unique. It's refreshing, bringing something back from the past. And you're not hitting fans over the head with doing 2 of the same match type in the same show. I attended the Royal Rumble in January. I completely acknowledge the men and women must both have Royal Rumbles. You can't get away from that. It's too important. But what you don't need is 2 Hell in a Cells. What you don't need are 2 Elimination Chambers. And what you don't need are 2 WarGames matches. In fact, there's a conversation to be had, and I'll actually save it for Tuesday when Vintage is back about whether this WarGames concept should continue. I'm fine with WWE using it. Forcing it every single year for this show is the antithesis of what Triple H said about Hell in a Cell when he took over creative. He said, I don't see a reason to force that into a show every single year. We're not going to do that anymore. But that's literally what they're doing with WarGames. And it's not completely working. I'm not saying it was a bad show. It obviously was not a bad show. I'm not saying I don't like the match. I obviously do like the match. But there is reasons and occasions where complete equality is necessary. Money in the Bank, Royal Rumble, those are perfect examples of it. There's others where it's not. I'm fine if there's only a women's WarGames match and a men's elimination match. I'm fine if there's only a women's Hell in a Cell and there's not a men's Hell in a Cell. If there's only a men's elimination chamber and there's not a women's elimination chamber. You don't have to do it every single time for both genders. It sometimes can be way too much. Look at Bad Blood. They only had one Hell in a Cell. Imagine if there was a second one on that show. You'd say, why the hell did they do two? Because the main one was so much better than the other. To this point, it had not largely been an issue, but this women's WarGames, it felt forced from the beginning, and it just did not deliver at all. And I don't really blame it on the women. I just blame it on the entire circumstance. If it never should have happened in the first place, and then it happens and it's not good, it just kind of gives you additional fuel for the fire. Again, it should have been an elimination match. It would have been way better. It was a rare miss for the main event women's roster, which usually shows out in its big spots, especially show openers. Usually it's the men that need to follow the women and exceed them. On this show, the men just needed to put on a good match because the women didn't do well at all. And it was super disappointing for me too, because you had super talented women for this specific match type. Candice LeRae was in there. She didn't really do anything. She had one move and missed it. Io Sky was great doing the move that she's done a million times off the top. What else did she do? Tiffany Stratton had one move as well. What else did she do? Like these were wasted opportunities to use these women, and a large part of it was because of the order of entrances, the over-reliance on weapons, all that stuff we talked about. So clearly I was down on women's WarGames, okay? But this was a super tough grade for me overall. It fell below expectations as an overall show, but the Intercontinental title match was even better than I expected. And the main event, the wrestling part of it, was even better than I expected. Nakamura won the title. That was great. The women shockingly dragged it down. Gunther Priest was exactly as I expected. So I'm going to go down for my pre-show grade, but not that far down. I'm going to say it was a 90 out of 100. Pretty much in line, still an A-, but slightly under, barely hanging on that border between a 90 and an 89. Let's go ahead and get to all of your votes, and I'm going to do the math at the same time I read the numbers because we're trying to do this all together super late at night. For the post-show grade for Survivor Series WarGames, 28.2% said it was between an A+ and an A. 45.5%, the vast majority, said between an A- and a B+. 16% B to B-. 10.3% C+ or lower. I don't understand that at all. I'm okay with some people voting for that. But 1 out of 10 people believing it was a C+ or lower show, I don't see that. That averages out. That was me stalling so I could do all the math. That averages out to an 89.59. Literally on the border between an A- and a B+. It rounds up, though, to a 90. So we're complete agreement again. An A- show for Survivor Series WarGames as WWE closes out 2024 main roster-wise with this premium live event. There is still NXT Deadline coming next week. There is WWE Saturday Night's main event coming in 2 weeks, of course, on Saturday night, Peacock and NBC. And that will wrap it up for the year with the Raw debut on Netflix serving as that big show to start 2025. Now that we're all wrapped up with the 2024 WWE Survivor Series
WarGames!
instant analysis, I'm going to go ahead, do a little Barry Horowitz, pat myself on the back. I felt like I beasted that one going solo immediately after one of the 4 biggest shows of the year. I hope we covered everything that you wanted us to cover from an instant analysis. That's our goal here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast, to provide you with true performance enhancing audio. If there was anything that we happened to miss, we will tackle it this coming Tuesday on our next WWE episode. We'll talk about everything else that happened on SmackDown, everything to come this Monday night on Raw, and we will have a second look at WWE Survivor Series WarGames. Anything I wanted to bring up that I forgot, Vintage Chris Vanini will provide his takes on Survivor Series WarGames. And if you have questions or comments coming out of the show or about anything else, you can send them in Jerome's gettingoverpod@gmail.com or on Twitter @gettingovercast. Of course, Blue Sky as well @gettingover. So that takes care of one reminder on the way out. Let's hit the others. First, that the Getting Over Wrestling Podcast
It's all about Defy.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube @Getting Overcast. And please also remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
I hope you do as well. $5 a month for the next couple of days, $45 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Overhead. Visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You will get the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reaction audios to every major TV show, and exclusive news analysis posts. All of that Black Friday, Cyber Monday special, buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Please support the continuation of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. And one additional note, now that I remember, if you visit our link tree on our Twitter profile or any of our profiles, we have a link in there for the WWE shop. They are doing a Black Friday, Cyber Monday special. You get all the discounts. But if you click that, Getting Over gets 10% commission on anything you purchase. Your price is the same, but they pay us. It's great. And you can use that at any time. I actually picked up 2 shirts. I bought a couple for my buddy. I got him and his daughter Rhea Ripley shirts. I got that Bex t-shirt, the one from Becky Lynch when she was in NXT. And I got the Jalen Brunson Knicks WWE shirt that I've been wanting ever since he showed up on that SmackDown from, I believe it was Brooklyn, all those months ago. So I picked all that stuff up recently for Black Friday. It's still working for Cyber Monday. Click that link in our link tree @Getting Overcast on Twitter, or of course @Getting Over on Blue Sky, and go to the WWE shop. 10% commission right to Getting Over. All right, that's it. We've kept you long enough, folks. We appreciate you listening to the 2024 WWE Survivor Series
WarGames!
Instant Analysis. This is the Silver King signing off and leaving you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.